Hey guys, it's King. Welcome to another Autism Digest interview, where today we have someone who is super duper relevant to this generation, the social media generation. She got an autism diagnosis at 39 and has since used social media to help raise awareness about this cause. She has over 16.1k followers on YouTube and has done work with another figure in the autism community, Thomas Henley. She is NeurodiverJENNt. Thanks for coming on, Jen.
Thanks so much for inviting me to be here today, Kate, and I really appreciate it.
Of course. For those that don't know you, do you mind telling us your story in your own words?
Yeah, absolutely. So, my story is similar to a lot of women who get diagnosed later in life who wonder why they feel so different from everybody else, but because women mask their traits so much more heavily, they don't get seen. When I had a son diagnosed. So he was diagnosed pretty early on. And I find it's interesting because I find that people find out one of two ways. Either, us later diagnosed, either they have a child diagnosed or they hit a major period of burnout or meltdown or whatever. But mine was the child getting diagnosed. So my son was officially diagnosed. And then I started connecting the pieces that there's a lot of similar traits that him and I share. Of course it's different because he's a little boy, I'm a grown female, but there were still a lot of issues that I shared with him. And then I started thinking about my father. And it was my husband who actually told me that it's highly hereditary, because I thought that people just got it by chance. And the minute he said that, my whole world changed. Like, I talk about it in my introductory video on YouTube, that it was just like time slowed down and sound stopped. It was like the biggest aha moment of my life. And I went to go and research it online. And unfortunately, the first video that I saw was the very stereotypical: you don't have any friends, you can't understand sarcasm, you like trains. So I was like, oh, that doesn't sound like me. But my husband was like, that's not what I've heard, because he was beginning to wonder about me as well after he learned that it was hereditary after our son's diagnosis. So I continued researching it and heard from other women on the spectrum who their story just resonated with me so much, and their insights and the way that they thought and perceived the world, that I literally thought like they were inside my head and, without my permission. And I was like, how are we so the same? I thought I was like the only weirdo that experienced these things, the sensitivities to lights and sounds and smells, and an ability to like look people in the eyes and all these things. So long story short, too late for that, right? But long story short, I ended up looking up some professionals in my area who not only were able to diagnose adults, because we find a lot of times that these mental health professionals only diagnose children, but then also somebody who understood how women on the spectrum present, because it is very different from maybe a male on the spectrum, and we mask a lot more heavily. So I got my official diagnosis. I am ADHD and autism, which made the most sense. When I went in there, I thought she would, because I was diagnosed with ADHD first, and I went in there telling her that maybe that was incorrect, maybe it's autism, and the report came back that it was both. So I was like, oh, okay, I didn't even know that you could have both at the same time. So that's how I found out.
That's amazing. And I was going to ask you what drove you to get your diagnosis at 39, but you explained it beautifully.
Thank you.
That's amazing. My next question for you is, how does autism help you when you make social media content, if you've ever thought about it?
Yeah, that is a really good question. It's funny because I always think of social media like Instagram and like Facebook. I don't really include YouTube in there, but obviously YouTube is my biggest platform that I'm on. And it helps me a lot because, number one, I really had a huge desire to get my story out there and to like get all of these things out of my head that I was internally experiencing and share that with others, partially for self-validation, because I was so new to it, and partially for finding community after I realized that I wasn't the only alien walking around in a human suit that exists out there, you know. And so I was able to accomplish both of those things. But obviously, having autism myself, I'm able to recount my own experiences in a way that you just absolutely can't if you didn't have autism. It holds me back in a lot of ways too, though, unfortunately, because I have a lot of like rigidness and perfectionism that I experience that kind of keeps me from posting as much or as often as I would like to. But I would like to think that what I post is as authentic as possible, because I never like go online and research like what could I write about? It's always like internal experiences that I feel, and then I choose to share, which is, you know, very easy to follow up on. And then, you know, there are strange things that I do, like weird little traits that I have that I'm even like, holy crap, I didn't realize that that was a trait of autism too, you know, because I just think about how I move about the world and experience the world, and I look it up, and sure enough, you know. Um, so I guess it has helped me in a lot of ways. It hinders me in a lot of ways, but you know, it can't be 100%. I'm able to share my story that comes from my own personal experience, which, you know, that's really the only thing I ever claim to be an expert in, is my own experience.
Exactly. I really like the way you put it. And honestly, if more of these fields, such as autism advocacy and some of these organizations, were open to not having autistic individuals get the degrees and just trusting their own experiences, we'd probably have more empathy in our society. My next question for you
100%.
is, how can we use social media to make neurodivergent voices heard?
Again, I think just sharing my own experience lets other people know that they're not crazy, they're not alone, because obviously not everybody is driven to put themselves out there on YouTube or you know, any other social media platforms, but they're still experiencing these things. And I think we feel so disconnected in a world that we just feel so differently from. And to be honest with you, I sometimes feel like I in some ways don't even fit in with the neurodivergent community, just because I feel so different all the time. But I do, obviously. But I think for a lot of these people, just feeling like I'm not alone, holy crap, you know, I try to address some of the more nuanced traits and stuff like that that I experience that maybe other creators don't talk about as much. You know, like just, you know, everybody talks about masking, everybody talks about sensory issues, but I try to pick up on little niche things that I experience, even that even more lets people know, like, whoa, I thought I was the only one who experienced that. I didn't realize that that was, you know, potentially connected to autism. And I think it empowers people to know, hopefully, I hope, that it's okay for them to share their own experiences as well if they feel safe to do so, and to just realize that they're not broken neurotypicals. They're perfectly healthy, you know, neurodivergent individuals, perfectly fine neurodivergent individuals.
I absolutely agree. And I'll add to that and say that what we need more of to help make these neurodivergent voices heard is kindness. I want to take this opportunity to address the Michaela Raines thing. As I'm sure you know, she passed recently. She was on the spectrum herself, had 2 million followers on YouTube and Instagram and all that. And I admired her work. She was bullied to death pretty much because people failed to see empathy. And honestly, you would agree with me, being an influencer yourself, these platforms are kind of to blame here too, because they give the negativity that platform to spew crap. So
Yeah.
overall, we honestly need to do better.
Yeah, actually, that's interesting. I wasn't aware of this individual. Maybe I've had my head in the sand a little bit too much. Who was she?
See, he ran the Save a Fox rescue chain She was on the spectrum herself. She passed a couple
Okay.
days ago, aged 29, and she was
29.
bullied for so long because people failed to have any empathy.
Oh
And
my
quite
goodness.
frankly, in our society, they still fail to do so, especially on these platforms. So, what we need to work on, as I'm sure you'll agree, being an influencer yourself, is not hiding behind a keyboard and using that to spew negativity. We should really spew kindness and empathy. With that said,
100%.
my
I
next
think I just want to jump in real quick before we move to the next question with one thought that I have on that. I think along those same veins, that people have to remember that just because you don't personally experience something and don't understand it, because a lot of people, they might think that we are making it up, or that we're using our weaknesses as excuses or some of the areas that we have deficits in, because they don't personally experience it, they tend to make fun of it or brush it off. And it's like, you might have something going on in your life that I've never experienced as well. So I could never fully understand it, but that doesn't give me the right to bully you or to discount your experiences or to say that you're making it up or that you could just try harder to make that go away for you, whatever that experience is. And so I think when people are in these online spaces, they really, really, really need to try to remember that just because you don't personally experience a certain thing, that doesn't mean you have the right to bully someone or be hateful towards them. Maybe have a little bit more of an open mind to lend some compassion and listen instead of talk. So,
exactly, that's a really beautiful way to put it. If people really want to learn about autism or anything really, they should get involved with certain groups, read platforms like Autism Digest, hear stories from actual individuals. But there's really no need for hate. Simple as that. My last question for you is what's your advice to anyone, neurodivergent or not, that wants to make it as a social media influencer?
um, to do it from your heart and something that you're passionate about. Because if you're doing it for the money or the followers, I think you'll quickly get burned out, because in the beginning stages, your channel grows very, very slowly. YouTube specifically, there's no taking a break, because if you miss a single week of uploads, then the algorithm stops promoting you as much. Excuse me. And with a regular job, you get PTO and you can take time off, but the algorithm punishes you, and it sounds like a lot of fun in the beginning, and then you quickly find how much work it is. And there's a lot of emotional highs and lows in regard to seeing success. And there's no end goal either. There's no like level or threshold that you reach that you're like, I made it, I made CEO. No, because there's no end game, there's no cap, and you're always just, so I would say that you really, if as long as you're passionate about what you're doing, and you know then I think that the followers and potentially the money will come later, or could come later. But if you don't enjoy what you're talking about and you don't feel passionate about what you're talking about, then it's going to be a very long, arduous, difficult journey for you. But in the beginning, my motto was, because I was, I'd gain like one follower for a while and then I'd lose two. And that's really hard to keep going when you don't have any momentum and you feel like you're not reaching people. So I quickly decided in the beginning stages that if I was just helping one person, like I had 100 subscribers at one point, and I was like, you know what? If this is all I ever get, I'm helping 100 people who are real, genuine people with real lives and thoughts and feelings, and they're human beings. And I'm reaching somebody. So that's all that matters to me. And that's what kept me going. So it's partially about you, but it's a lot about the other people as well. That's what I would say to keep in mind.
Yeah, and that's really good advice. Anyway, that's going to do it for this interview. Thank you so much to Jen for coming on and sharing her story and a powerful statement. Man, not bad. If you guys want to see more amazing interviews, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to the Autism Digest channel. Be on the lookout for our August issue when it comes out by going to autismdigest.com. And be on the lookout for the audio file of this that will be posted onto Spotify within the next few days by typing in Autism Digest on the Spotify search bar. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.
Thanks, Kaden. Thanks for having me on.